All right. Happy Friday, you guys. Happy Friday. I'm Candace Williams here with you again for another series episode. I still don't know what to call it. LinkedIn Live for Okay, so now what? Cyber Insights. And really, this series is about simplifying complex cyber topics, whether it's into cyber, starting your career, or just things that have come up in cybersecurity that we need to know as practitioners to do and execute. And so, this live series is really to give you actionable takeaways and answers from, again, real life practitioners, leaders in the space to add value, right? And so in our last session, we talked about the fundamental CMMC 2.0, CMMC 2.0, and what it was, the who, what, when, where about it, when it's coming into reality, what impacts it's going to have on companies and organizations, just everything. And we had Yvonne with us for the very first session, and she's come back to give us more actual hands-on actionable insights, actually going through some of the details and nitty-gritty to give you what you need to execute if you don't have, a large organization, right? This is for those small businesses who may not have the staff and support, right? So you've got to know what you're doing. You got to know the language, the lingo, and exactly how to take action on this, right? And so we're here for part two. If you missed part one, the replay is available on my LinkedIn, so please go back and check it out. But again, we're taking it up a notch today, and we're going to dig into the actual nuts and bolts of CMMC 2.0. So I am going to bring Yvonne back on the stage. I may do another intro, but I think you guys know her by now. But we could just to give it a quick intro. Yvonne is co-founder of CyberMyte, and she is phenomenal. She has a focus right now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, helping small businesses move into CMMC 2.0 with CyberMyte's platform. And so she can kind of give more details about that. But really the goal is to get you to a ready state, a level 2 state, to be able to do work within the DIB, which is the Defense Industrial Base. And so she's the expert. I'm learning. And so I'm also going to get a lot from this session. So Yvonne, if you want to do another intro, and then we'll dive right in and we'll start to dig into it. Oh, let me do a caveat. So I'm in a co-working space today. I was already out, and so it's echoey, and you may hear voices, hopefully not too bad. So I'm going to mute myself and I'm not talking so that we can make sure we hear Yvonne very clearly. And yeah, so caveat over. Yvonne, on to you.
All right. Hello, everybody. Candace did a great job with my intro. Let me see, what should I add to that? I guess really what we're trying to do is help small businesses really not run away from this scary CMMC and help you one of two ways. One is keep you where you are right now and just consult and help you get through the CMMC 2.0 level 2, either get you to a C3PAO or self-assessment, or 2, bring you onto our proprietary cloud that we've built out, and get you CMMC certified that way. So those are the 2 ways that we're looking to help small businesses stay working for the Defense Industrial Base or stay in the DIB. What we're trying to avoid is, making this seem like a daunting, it could be a daunting task. It could be an expensive task, depending on where you are today. But what I'm hoping to clear up some stuff is maybe you're farther along than you think. Maybe there are some things that you're hearing through the chains, through the grapevine, that are making things seem more convoluted than they really are. So what I'm hoping to present, maybe not just today, but maybe throughout some other episodes, is maybe kind of guide you on how you could potentially get some of this stuff done on your own. Potentially you have some other certifications that your businesses have in place already, maybe some ISOs. Maybe you have the cybersecurity framework already done within your organization and how you can leverage some of those in order to kind of start your CMMC 2.0, where Candace is an expert in some of these other certifications. I would say that she is pretty well prepared, in my opinion, for something like CMMC, which is nothing more than another type of compliance um, check. Just another way to say, are you compliant in these NIST 171 checks? So with that, I think really I just want to show you where you can get the information direct from the source, um, from the CMMC website, and Candace is going to present that to you guys.
Yes, I'm going to share. And while I'm sharing this, can we just do a quick refresher on the levels of
Oh,
CMMC
yes,
2.0? Like, what's just a quick down and dirty 30-second, 60-second cliff notes of what we talked about last week to kind of give a level set for everybody?
sure. So level one is where you're going to actually, before I do that, what I
Yeah.
did find through here is this really cool briefing that was done in October, and they actually have it defined right here.
Yes.
So your level one right here is going to be the 15 requirements that we talked about last week. And they actually have the numbers written here, so I don't have to memorize it. You like that, Candace? So these 15 requirements are super basic. They're just basically talking about how you need to have antivirus, multi-factor authentication, password hygiene, password health, stuff like that. And these can all be self-assessment. Excuse me. And you just need to record your results inside of SPRS, which is a website, which is a module, I guess, under PIEE or PIEEE or PIE. I don't really know how anybody says that. I can actually just take you there really quick. So it's inside of this website. Um, and your cybersecurity professional or the person that you guys designate um, to be the person that does this assessment or does this recording is going to have to get the credentials to report in SPRS. So once you log into this account, you'll be able to see the you'll be able to see the SPRS. Um, did it fail? I didn't read the error. You'll be able to see your SPRS module inside of there. Oh, it's telling me that it's going to send me my code.
Okay. Which,
Anyways,
just to say this, every link that we share, we're going to make sure to drop below the
okay.
live so you guys can go back and kind of track where we're working through this on. But we did this intentionally to make sure you actually knew where to go, knew what it
Yes.
looked like. No confusion. This is the real life, what you click on, what you're going to do. So just
Yeah,
want to make sure that was clear so folks aren't like, wait, where do we go?
this is kind of a tedious process as well. This can take quite a while. You do need a cage code. Your organization does need a cage code to enroll here. You need to first get an administrator enrolled. In my case, I'm all of the roles. So I first had to enroll as the administrator. You first need a cage code, which in order to get a cage code, you need a sam.gov. So there's like a whole process. So it depends again where your organization is in the process of being a small business, a DIB. Um, so let's just say you're all set. You have everything you need to be, you've already worked for the federal government as a small business. Um, you would need to come in here and request the additional role. And I believe it's like cybersecurity user, I believe is the name of the role. And once I get in there, um, I can double check that. And then once you get that role, you'll see a module pop up. It'll say SPRS. You'll click in there and it'll say, what, you'll type in when was the last time you completed your SSP, which is basically when was the last time you did your self-assessment? What was your score? What was the date? And did you have any POAMs, which we talked about last week? And when do you plan to get those fixed and that kind of stuff? And you would record all of that in SPRS. So I wanted to bring that up. Um, and then level 2 was the 110 that we talked about. So you don't lose any of the level 1, that still stays, but then you go on to add the 110, which is it rolls in the 15. And those come from NIST 171 revision 2. And what we'll talk about later, because this was something that we kind of questioned last week, was when does the remember how we talked about the CFR 48 came out December 16th, and then what was the timeline for that?
Right, what are the phases? Yep.
Yes. Well, this slide deck actually has the phases. And I'll scroll down. I was really excited when I saw it. And then level 3 is the NIST 171 and 172 controls. And that requires the DIBCAC. You can't do the self-assessment with that one.
Okay, so that's our 1 through 3 recap.
Yep.
Okay, which it doesn't seem simple, right? It wasn't simple
Right.
when I heard it last week. Like you said, it's not simple, but we can make it clear enough. You can start at ground zero and work your way up. So if you were
Yes.
starting, I'm a small business, I'm in the DIB, I now have this requirement on my desk. I would say, what would be step one? I know the very first site you showed, maybe that was step one, but what would be like step one, and kind of walking through what that looks like? And then maybe looking at some of those harder control families. I know we talked about that. Like, what would stump people? Some things are super easy, right? Something that you can just, all right, I already have this, I already can, leverage this, but, you know, what could be a little more difficult? So we'll talk about all that and then some, right? So let's just start there. Ground zero, where would I go?
Okay. I did want to talk to you about this though really fast. Is that okay? Is that a yes? I
Can
can't
you
see
hear
your
me?
face.
Yep, it's okay. I had to
Okay.
mute. Yeah, no, you're
Okay.
good.
Okay, so if December 16th, 2024, the CFR rule went effective or went into effect, that would mean that phase 1 would start 2025. That would mean all application, where applicable, solicitations will require level 2 certification. So right now, solicitations will require level 1 or 2 self-assessments. So I would say, like we said last week, definitely try to go for that level 2 self-assessment. But level 1, definitely, since everybody's obviously dealing with solicitations, right? Because that's what level 1 is for, protecting those solicitations. But I would say start with the level 2 self-assessment. That should be everybody's goal right now. And then your 1-year goal should be trying to get a level 2 certification, meaning a third-party assessment. Within the next year. So I think that's what's so good about this timeline is you can see kind of like from a small business perspective and like a budgetary perspective, like you can see financially like where you need to be, potentially like money wise. Because the third party assessments are not going to be very, very cheap. Okay, so basically the first thing that we talked about last time, and where I think you would need to start from the very, very beginning, which I think would be the most tedious thing, is to go through your current assets and see if you have CUI anywhere. This isn't, to kind of say you're in big trouble, ooh, this is you assessing yourself. This isn't, me or Candace gonna, tell on you or anything like that. This is you saying, okay, we need to sit down and say, where is all of our CUI right now? We need to, a hard stop. Where is it? Is it in our SharePoint? Where in our SharePoint? Who has access to that folder or, location in Teams, in SharePoint? Who received it through the email? How did they get it into SharePoint? What mechanisms were used to get it into SharePoint? uh, I mean, I'm going to say it, but just in case, was it through a USB? Was it through snail mail? And then they did a, what do you call that? scanner, and they scanned it in and then put it into SharePoint. Whatever, if you're embarrassed to say it, it doesn't matter. You need to write it down. Even if you want to change it a year from now, it doesn't matter. If it's the process that you're using today, it needs to be there. When you consider this, consider the people that touched that CUI, consider the technology that touched that CUI, and consider the processes that touch that CUI. And all of those would be considered in scope. And then you just draw a picture. It could be circles, squares, lines, arrows. It doesn't have to be anything pretty. You could worry about making it pretty later. Today it's just trying to figure out what needs to be in scope for your CMMC, because the last thing you want to do is say, well, I'm 1,000 employee company and we have 15 offices and I need to CMMC all of it. Where, that might not really be true, because only one person in your whole facility is federal and they're the only ones really doing anything with CMMC. And if that's the case and the CUI is flowing, I'm doing stuff on my desk and you guys can't see me, and the CUI is flowing just, between, federal customer, like the example I used last time, it went, you went to GSA eBuy, you downloaded a solicitation that unfortunately had been labeled as CUI and placed there on eBuy, which it is happening. And then you downloaded it, your federal sales team downloaded it onto their corporate laptop and placed it into SharePoint. Maybe they labeled it because that's your policies. That's great. And you have 5 sales team members, or 5 employees that are authorized to view that. So now they're in scope. And one of them decided to send it, I don't know, to Barbara, who's accounting, to see if she can do something special, with the sales numbers and stuff. So now Barbara's in scope, and so is her laptop, and so is her house, because she works from home. So, that's exactly kind of like the path that you need to go. And if you're using SharePoint in the cloud, which is Office 365 or any of that kind of stuff, then you definitely need to make sure that any of your cloud solutions are FedRAMP compliant. Yeah, I know that's a lot, but the very first thing you need to do is scope. Scope.
Did you give an example last time of a paper airplane? Did you give an example?
Airplane. Yes, the
That's what I imagine is him. I'm like, okay, the airplane's going to travel around. So yeah, that was a good visualization, just so you know, because that's what I thought in my head.
And the paper airplane only touches CUI. It's the only trajectory is CUI. It's like, I only know CUI. That's the only path I go. And it just like, oh, there's no CUI there. And it just literally just follow the CUI. And it's a tedious job. But I'm going to tell you, it's like hard work up front, easy work later. Because if you're sitting there trying to CMMC or scope out your whole entire environment for CMMC, I feel like you are going to put, I'm not trying to tell you that you don't need to secure your whole entire business. I think I think you should be doing that. I'm not saying NIST 171 shouldn't be implemented throughout your whole entire environment, but I don't think you need a C3PAO, third-party assessment, which could cost you tens of thousands of dollars to come in and do a certification on your whole entire 10-site location, that kind of stuff. So scope it to think about what they're going to need to come in and assess, because they're going to charge you for every place that they need to come and physically touch, physically look at. Just think about all that kind of stuff. minimize where that CUI is traveling, minimize where the handoff of the CUI is going. If you have a federal team, keep the federal team segmented from the non-federal team. Do some micro segmentation with some technology that's allowed. Things like that. Really try to partition off your non-CUI from your CUI. That is my
One thing I would say
recommendation.
though, you made a good point. If you don't have any sort of cybersecurity program, which I'm assuming most would, but if you're a really small business, maybe level one is where you start. So that's just cyber hygiene, right? That's
Yeah.
maybe a good benchmark just for that, but not the level two and beyond, right? I think that's, if you have nothing, start there, right? But if you have something, then of course, this is where you kind of get into the details of the level two and actually getting a little more deep dive into this thing. So question for you. If
Yeah.
someone is scoping, is there a document out there that's a scoping document that gives them like some sort of framework to fill in, or is just
Yes.
grab a Word document and fill it out?
No, there's a great so back to this the CMMC website from the CIO office. They have this scoping guideline, the CMMC level 2 scoping guide. Pretty much just updated. It's pretty decently new. So this is very wordy. I kind of like it, but really my favorite, this is a very good, this is the best part of this document right here, because it really kind of explains what a process is, what it means to store it and transmit. So like it gives you I guess a visual idea of what it means. So like when I say, does it store, process, or transmit CUI? You can actually say, oh, that's what that means. You know what I'm saying? Like you could say, oh yeah, yeah, the CUI does do that. It goes through that thing to do that. You know what I mean? So now you can kind of really visualize, oh yeah, it does, it goes through that thing. It's scanned at this point. So that means it's being processed through that and things like that. So now you know, oh, I need to add it to the scope. But personally, I am a big fan of this website. It's cmmccoa.com. It is I will not take you to the front page because it's a bit vulgar, but basically it was just a bunch of guys that got together and made this website to kind of put a bunch of open source information out there to help people get through CMMC. Just because the price of being CMMC'd was so high, they were just like, you don't need, you don't need to pay for anything. This is all the free information is out there, that kind of stuff. But I love this tree, because you can just kind of like, okay, start here, and you just kind of go down this what do you call this flow chart,
Decision
this
tree,
decision tree.
yeah.
Yeah. And just kind of go through it and just kind of answer these questions for every piece of CUI that you find inside of your environment. I have other documentations that I have, but I need to ask the people that gave them to me if I'm allowed to share them. But this is online. They have other documentation as well. That is awesome. I absolutely love this website more than anything. They give you all sorts of documentation.
Yeah, this is pretty comprehensive. I hadn't heard of this before. Definitely something to share. I'm looking at it. Yeah, this is pretty deep. And I love when someone does something open source, kind of
Yeah.
giving you the tips and tricks to get stuff done. This is really good. Yeah.
Yeah, just don't go to the front page. I mean, I
Yes.
love the homepage, but it's just I didn't want to put it on here.
We're not going to show the homepage. Okay, so this will help with the scoping aspect. So once you're done with this, right, whether it's the document
Yep.
formerly from the CMMC CIO website or this, you'll get scoped, right? You'll get scoped and you're
Yes.
good to move on to the next. step. So this is, yeah, I like that a lot.
Okay, this is another really big document that they made, but this is really cool. It's their CMMC kill chain, and it kind of like is talking about what we're talking about right now, like,
Mhm.
how to start, like where to go. It's basically documenting the whole entire flow, and they did it all like literally like this.
Nice.
Yeah, it's intense, but it's
It
really
is. It looks
cool.
cool. This shit.
Yeah, so, like, phase 2 is basically scoping, so and they just kind of break it down. They're talking about creating your data flow diagram, which is essentially the airplane. So you're basically saying, so you have this airplane, right? So let's talk about this data flow diagram. We're just talking about how is your airplane that is this filled with just CUI, how's it, going in and out of your net? Is it just coming in? And if it's coming in, how is it coming in? How is it staying in? Where's it being stored? Um, you know, and then if it's going back out, how are you doing that? What mechanisms are doing that, going back to that process, or transmissions. How are we doing that? And those things need to be documented in some sort of diagram. And usually you do like arrows and protocols, and you're showing devices on the other end. And you're showing like some sort of diagram, and you're saying, well, this is connecting to the federal FedRAMP, maybe their accredited system. You're connected to maybe some sort of accredited system inside the government, right? Or something like that.
It's like your data flow diagram. Your data flow diagram, where the data is going, where it's flowing. Yeah.
Correct. And in this case, you're talking about the CUI. Where is it going? We just want to know, where's the CUI coming from and where is it going? And what are you doing once it's there? Like, where's it sitting? So when it's inside your environment, we want to know what it's doing when it's inside. We want to know that it's sitting inside of some sort of storage, and that it's being taken care of in there,
Yep.
because let's just say you have ransomware, you get ransomware. We want to know that that's being prevented. Or if it does happen, what are you doing to make sure that it's being encrypted, or that it's been encrypted, and that kind of stuff. So those are things that they're looking for. What kind of encryption are you using? And all that stuff should be included in your system security plan. Does that make sense?
It does, because that's one of the things you said you may already have. You made that point earlier. There's some things that probably exist just inherently
Yeah.
because you are processing, and you should have an SSP or some sort of documentation explaining your network or your system, right, from a security lens. So no, it makes sense perfectly to me.
And a lot of these small businesses are more than likely using some sort of cloud solution. And unfortunately, a lot of them might think that they do have encryption in place, or especially encryption in storage. But I think for a lot of them, they require elevated licensing and stuff like that. So it would be a matter of finding out if that's something that's taking place, and stuff like that. So um, really just, asking all the questions to whoever is providing you your cloud solution.
And that's the part of third party risk management, right? Third party risk
Yes.
management, right? You got to know
Yes,
what
you
you're
should
doing.
have a third party supplier questionnaire, or something out there, that you're some supply chain questionnaire, something that you're doing to find out. I guess there's lots of names for it. What are you doing to make sure that the your suppliers, anybody who's providing you a service, is compliant with some sort of security. Um, and in this case, if they're doing any sort of technology related to CUI, they should be compliant with 171 or CMMC.
All right. So we're scoped. We know what that looks like.
Yep.
So then what's the next thing? What's the next big piece to this, right?
Oh, yep. So the next big thing is, we know that this square and all the things inside of it are going to be part of our assessment. So now we have to go to our control. So I'm basically just clicking on these links and pulling these things up. So this right here is what I'm pulling up, which is the assessment guide, because it's going to be what we are assessing. I think I pretty much opened it already. Yep. It's pretty tedious document, but it's very important. Okay, none of this is, we can go over that later. So there are 14 families. Okay, let me go to the very beginning. I've never taught any of this before, so I just need to
Reorient. No, I know how it is.
I need to figure out how to teach this.
So 14 control families. Can we
Yeah.
explain for those who may not know what a control family is? Right. What is
Okay. Yeah. So a control family is like a group of, okay, here they're beautifully set right here. So they are a group of controls under each of these families that are related to each other. So everything under the AC controls or the access control family are going to be related to access control. And then anything under the awareness training is going to be about cybersecurity awareness or cybersecurity training. Audit and accountability, same thing, all the way down to the bottom. So access control is going to be about physical, logical. So it's any type of access to the system. Awareness and training actually is not just cyber, it's going to be any type of training. So training related to the job, training related to incident response, COOP. How do we say COOP?
disaster recovery.
Disaster recovery training.
Okay.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay.
Disaster recovery training, cyber awareness training, that kind of any type of training. So just making sure that people on your team are being trained and are aware. So phishing training and awareness, audit and accountability. So we're not just talking about this type of audit, not just talking about like an audit on your system, but we're talking about like auditing accounts, auditing actions, auditing people who have special access. We're also talking about auditing like weird things that are happening on your system. We're also talking about like accountability, like what if somebody makes changes? We want to make sure that there is history versioning so that we can always make sure that there is accountability of changes, so that there's always a finger to point back to, not for blaming, but more like breadcrumbs. There's always breadcrumbs for anything that happens on the network, and that falls under audit and accountability. There's always got to be some form of traceability on all actions that happen in the system, and that will help in any type of incident response. So as long as that's all happening, then your audit and accountability family, all of that's going to be covered under the AU family. Configuration management. This is not just about configuration management of, first of all, this family is about changes to the baseline configuration of the assets in your scope. So we're talking about, so the scope is set up. Today we drew it the way it is. It's set up the way it is. That's our baseline configuration. Let's just say that we decide a month from now we want to change the way something looks. We need to make sure we have a proper process in place to request a change to that configuration. It goes through an approval process. It goes through, some formal process that anybody that matters agrees to that change, and that it has been checked to make sure that that it's not going to that it's not going to bring in any vulnerabilities, or that CUI is not going to be leaked, or anything like it. Everybody is aware of the change, and that bad things aren't going to come in, bad things aren't going to go out, things like that.
I was going to say the formal name is your Configuration Control Board, your CCB. That's the
Yep,
formal name for it. Yep.
correct. Identification and authentication is really just talking about, the easiest way to put that is username, passwords. We're talking about multi-factor authentication, how people are identified and authenticated. This is not always just logical. This could be physical. This is talking about how you also for initial access into the system. So, how we hire people now remotely. How are you identifying they are who they are? Things like that. So that's going to fall under your identification and authentication. Incident response is going to be if there's an incident like a ransomware attack, how do we respond to that? So there's a whole entire incident response plan to that. And then you're going to do there's a couple follow-on steps to that whole family. That's quite a tedious family. And I feel like this one could be particularly hard for small businesses. But incident response is a tough one. Maintenance, this is talking about maintenance of your items within scope. This could talk about like you're inviting people from the outside in to fix stuff. It could be talking about if you have like a Microsoft Azure account and you hire third parties to help you maintain it. How do you give them access and that kind of stuff. Media protection, this one is talking about this one's tricky. So this one is talking about not just how are you protecting like your USBs, but it's also talking about like the disposal of media. Like, so if you find out that, or if you're done with that USB, how do you dispose of it? Like, are you taking it to a disintegrator? Are you smashing it with a hammer? Do you have evidence of it? Do you have accountability that happened? Are you putting it in what's your process for that? When you ship it through the mail, what are you doing for that? It's a whole process for media protection. Do you have documents in place that are in your HR policy that talks about what your employees can or cannot do as far as media, external media goes? All that falls under media protection. Personnel security, that is a lot of onboarding and offboarding. Like, what is your onboarding process? What's your offboarding process? Do you make them fill out all these paperwork? Are you doing your due diligence? Are you offboarding them? Are you making sure they give you everything back? That kind of stuff. Are they filling out an AUP and doing their cyber awareness training before they get access? Like, walk us through the process of letting of a new employee before they can touch a computer. Physical protection. I believe that many small businesses might not, no, that might not be true, but this is going to talk about like for anything in scope, this would actually be true for probably those that have
Like a facility, so like gates,
facility.
guards, guns, safes.
Yeah, like a house or a business office. So this is going to talk about like cameras, water valves, motion sensors, just anything physical protection, anything to protect the devices. So do you lock rooms? Do you have keys? Do you have a key box? Do you have do you keep logs of who comes in, who leaves, that kind of stuff? Risk assessments, that's going to talk about, do you do an annual risk assessment, which is very similar to what the CMMC is. Security assessment, which is going to be part of your risk assessment. You do a security assessment, part of your risk assessment. And then you do your system and communications protections. This is going to have to do a lot with your
Like networks, data
FIPS, yeah,
transit.
your encryptions, your FIPS 140-3, your this one has a lot to do with like your sticks, like how are your networks configured, how are your computers talking, your devices talking to one another, how are your firewalls, um, your host intrusion detections and stuff, how are your internal data flows versus your external data flows, stuff like that. And then system and information integrity. This is a lot of your vulnerability and patch management type stuff that's going to be involved in that last one, which I think is going to be a big one for small businesses as well.
I would agree. No, and I know that was long, but I would say it's so important to understand control families, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't have another third party organization like CyberMyte helping you, then you need to understand who you need to get to advise and to give, you an understanding of what's in these families. So that's why it's important to know. You don't have to be a SME on all of them,
Yeah.
but you need to be aware so you know who to outsource to and get support from. So this was important.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can Google it, but I think hearing just the layman's terms of what it is so valuable. So I appreciate that because I
Well, I
understand.
hope it was helpful. I don't know that I put it into layman's term. That was tough.
I feel like it was no, well,
Okay.
so I have to always think about my filter too, because like I understand what you're saying and I'm processing it, but I thought it was simple enough that someone
Okay,
could
good.
kind of understand what each family meant. But this is like the framework, right? This is the core
Yes.
of going through this
Yep.
assessment. So you mentioned earlier some harder control families, like ones that are
Yep.
going to be difficult for a small business. You said incident response,
Yeah.
systems and communications protection. What else? Like, what would be a challenging control family that we can kind of pull the thread on? I know we only have like probably another 15 minutes, but what's another family to like pull the thread on and just say, all right, here's what you're gonna have to do here. Here's where it starts. Here's what this means when you go into it. And maybe we'll touch on that lightly now. And then if we do another part to this, kind of going into another, but what would it look like to like peel back one of these control families and just read one and process how to assess it and what to say in your response? Can we just do one really quickly and say, hey, this is what you should, this will get you. Here's how you should look at it. Here's what it really means. Because there is cyber speak. There is speak that is very formalized, very dry
Yeah.
as dry can be with no water to wash it down. So you got
Yep.
to be able to first take it,
Yeah.
process it, and then know what it means. So can we peel back
Okay.
the onion a little bit on one of these?
So the first question is which ones do I think will be hard or a bit tougher?
Yes.
So for me, I think system and information integrity might be tough. I think the reasoning for that might be because, and I'm just generalizing, but I feel like the majority of small businesses might be on a cloud solution. Um, so there might be this sense of security, like this sense of, oh, they've got it kind of thing. Like the cloud's got it. Azure's handling that. Or there might be this sense of uh, or it or it might be that they just might not have the tools yet in place because a lot of them require extra licensing and blah 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 blah. So for example, system and information integrity would require Intune, would require well, it would require Intune. So let's just say you're a small business in Microsoft Azure, but you don't have Intune. I could tell you right off the bat, you cannot meet system and information integrity, um, especially if your end devices have CUI. Because now I can tell you that your system devices, you can't guarantee they're receiving patches because you can't touch them. You have no hold on any of the external devices that are holding onto your CUI. Um, so those small businesses would have to go up a license in order to get Intune. But we could go into SI and look into SI if you wanted to and kind of break apart those controls just to see, um, just to look at one, if that's what you wanted to do.
So I would say let's take one because I know one of the questions was
Okay.
what's the most challenging, and then I guess while we crack open this family, what's like one mistake that you see they make when they start the assessment? Just thinking about how somebody would go in here and maybe do an initial dive and think they're, doing something and they're really not. So what's like just something they need to
Oh, easy.
recognize and not make that, cardinal mistake, honestly, going into this control family and working through it. So just that thought process. And then we'll look at one control and maybe come back later on and kind of dig into some more. But I think this is valuable.
I think the number one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people like to use like a lot of the spreadsheets that are going around on the internet. Um, and a lot of the spreadsheets on the internet, I think sometimes are missing a lot of the vital information that you can get from like the assessment guide. Um, and I'm not saying don't use the spreadsheets, because sometimes the spreadsheets are nice to kind of like filter and see where you're at. But in my opinion, and I've been doing this for a very long time, I always have the assessment guide open, um, because it's always important to see the whole context of the control and then go back and answer it in the spreadsheet if that's how you prefer. That way you could filter, okay, implement it, and then you can see where you need to be at. But my where I've seen the mistake is people don't use this guide. And then they feel like they're compliant because the spreadsheet doesn't have the full context of the control. So and they're not. So the assessor will come and they'll say, you're not compliant because I'm looking for certain things. If you look at this test section, this is what the assessor will come in, and this is exactly what they're looking for. And if they come there, if they go to your area and they look at your, and we're assuming this is a third party assessment, let's pretend it's not yourself. They're coming there, they don't know you at all, and they're going to look for certain things, and they don't find this stuff easily. Let's just pretend you have it, but it's all dug up somewhere. You don't present it to them in an easy way. Yeah, then you failed this control. But if you knew where to look, or if you happened to find a spreadsheet that presented all this information to you, then you've just been then you've got the upper hand. But
I
what I
want to
like to do,
scroll, but can I
huh?
pull a thread on that? Because that's so good. Because
Yeah,
I've been through, I don't even know how many assessments at this point. I mean,
right.
every year is probably just several, but that is such a good point. When you're going through this, like one thing that's helped me pass assessments with a breeze is like having something, whether it's a
Yeah,
folder, a document, some sort of binder, whatever it is, with everything laid out. And I know it can be very tedious, but as you're going through this, capturing the artifacts, having it easily available, listen, it's changed the
yeah,
game on several assessments. So I just, when you said that, I was like, oh,
yep,
yes, please document it, have it
yeah.
ready. So
I don't know
I'll
if this is a military thing or just an army thing, but
maybe.
when they would walk into our barracks room, if it smelled like pine saw, like if it blew you away, they didn't even check the rest of the room. They're like, it smells clean.
That's what
We're
that is.
good.
That's the pine saw. That's the pine. That binder is the pine saw smell
It's
or
the
whatever
pine
it is.
saw.
A
They're like,
dry
this
something.
looks compliant.
Yes. Seriously. It's
Yeah,
it's it's a hack. It's a
yeah, it's a
GRC
hack.
hack.
Yeah,
Have it ready for them.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, okay, this is what they're gonna look for. Um, this is exactly what they're trained to look for. So this is what you should be striving to achieve. Um, and some of the spreadsheets out there are going to have mostly just this part. Some might have the examined parts. I'm not really sure. I haven't found a lot of those, but some might have. It depends on who put the spreadsheet together or whatever. But I always have this assessment guide with me, and it's just from their website. So, um, oh crap, which, oh no, where, oh there I am. Okay,
Tab hunt. That's how my
okay,
day-to-day desktop looks anyway. There's like 20 of those, so it's pretty ridiculous.
okay. All right. So, here we are. We're at uh the system and information's integrity family. Okay, so this is our family right here. This is our level because we're level 2. this is our assessment. Okay, I know that they actually walk us through um the numbering thing. But this is 3.14.1. So this is like the numbering scheme. So the next one will be 13.14, 3.14.2, if that makes sense. But if there was a how do you say, like a an exception to 2, there would be a 3.14.2, and then there would be a honestly, I don't think SI would be a very good example of this one. A's would be like yeah. SI is very short. Okay. Anyways, we could work through those on another day, but this is the gist of it is it goes in numerical order. I went too far.
We're getting dizzy. We're like, wow.
Sorry. Okay,
No,
sorry.
okay.
Okay. All right. So, okay, assessment objectives. Okay, so the goal is the overall control is to identify, report, and correct system flaws in a timely manner. System flaws are any sort, anything could be a bug, a vulnerability, a critical update, a flaw, just something bad. So don't just automatically assume a flaw is um one specific thing. A flaw is something that isn't supposed to be there. A timely manner is as quick as possible. So you define these things. Um, determine if so now you have these A, B, C, D, E, and F. And see these different things. You need to actually write this inside your SSP. So you would say, you would actually like you would write inside your SSP, you would have a big section in there called system and information integrity. And then you would have a section in there called, flaw remediation. And you would say, um, we identify system flaws within this specified time, and write your time. You could even be very specific. Let's say you are a SaaS solution, like you're a developing company and you have timelines. I imagine you do. So you work in an iterative like scrum type environment. So you could say bugs are use your current policies that you have in place. You don't have to make up new time. So you say you copy paste from your current your current policies. You say we work our bugs through this process. These kind of bugs are worked in this timeline. These kind of bugs are worked in this, like that. Um, Now that may not solve patches or whatever, but for now, that's what you have. Um, and then you just keep going down the list and adding the stuff that you have. What you need to keep in mind is whatever you don't have, whatever you do not answer. So, for example, the time within which to report system flaws is specified. Let's just say C, you don't have anything written there, highlighted in red, and then you write it in your poem and you say, we need to come up with a time within which we need to report our system flaws. And then you guys come up with a time that you're going to report your system flaws. And then once you come up with that time and who you're going to report those flaws to and what that process is going to look like, then you come and update your SSP through your configuration management process. Um, and then that's how your SSP gets updated. But you want your SSP to be real. You don't want your SSP to be filled with fake stuff. Because
I was
what'll
like, please
happen,
don't do that. Please.
yeah, because what'll happen is, if you get that kind of assessor, they're going to interview people in your business. And so they're going to go up to a random person and say, so it says here that you have to report your flaws within 2 hours. Do you do that? And they're going to be like,
No,
Uh,
I don't do that.
yeah, I've never done that. I didn't
2
even know that was a
hours.
thing. What? uh, I've done things where it's like we don't we we report through our Jira. Once we find a bug, we report our bug within Jira through our ticketing process, and it automatically gets submitted to our supervisor. That's a reporting system. So you don't need to think so, you know, doesn't need to be a person. Remember, it's a process. So your process is you find a bug, you write it in Jira, and then from there it gets triggered and the action moves on to somebody else. That's a reporting. And typically your bugs are reported within a specified time frame. Your bugs are reported after you do a testing event, which is probably after your your application moves from development to staging and then blah blah blah. But you don't have to make stuff up. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist, and you write it as a poem item and you present it to um, your chain of command. One of the things I've learned before we leave, if you know you don't have it, you document you don't have it, because you identified you don't have it, you documented you don't have it. That's what matters. You're not lying about it, you're upfront about it, and you're recognize that you need to fix it. That goes a long way.
A long way.
A very long
Echoing,
way.
foot stomp,
Yeah,
blaring lights. Be honest.
correct.
It goes a long way. Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh, I keep trying to scroll the I keep coming back to our chat and I keep trying to scroll that picture. Let's
No,
see.
okay.
All right. Let's see. System flaws are corrected. So what I would want to, like, let's say I was assessing your system and you told me you use Jira. You know what I would want to see? Just show me a few flaws that you've reported in Jira and give me some reports. Because that would be perfect. That would, to me,
Evidence.
that would solve all of this.
Yep.
If you have some sort of vulnerability tool, like for us, we use like OpenVAS, show me some reports. Like, a month before and a month after, and it'll show me like how long it took you to solve some of those flaws.
Mhm.
Um, so keep some historical reports and stuff like that. Um, Intune, if you have Intune, yeah, just pull some reports from there. Show me how long it's taking you to patch some of your systems and stuff like that if you don't have them set to auto update. A lot of these will solve that problem, at least for the um, this part, at least for Intune.
Listen, this is, I know we're coming up on 7,
Yeah.
but I think there may be another one, right? And I don't know how helpful this is. I think it's helpful, and it's only because I do this, and I think it's important to know these steps and to be really clear on what the requirements are. And that's the goal of this,
Yeah.
is to what do you have to do? How do you read through this? And even just that first part and kind of assessing and breaking down what all this looks like, not using an Excel spreadsheet that's watered down, going to the source to be able to be really clear on these requirements. Because if you get it watered down, to Yvonne's point earlier, the session's not going to be like, oh, well, you use the Excel, I'm going to use that too. Absolutely not, right? They go by specifically their checklist, the
Right.
requirements, and it's all built from this. And so it's important to really note that, and again, run through this to be very clear, whether you're doing it or not. You mentioned last week, you said someone got their help desk tech to do it. Whether
Yeah.
you're the help desk tech, whether you are hired in to do this, however that looks, whether you're the CEO with 5,000 hats and this is a requirement, the whole goal is to be really clear on that, on what you need to do and how you assess it. And so even though we didn't get through all of this, we may just actually go through at least explaining these 3 parts, because I don't want to leave that as a cliffhanger. I think it's important to kind of talk
Okay.
about the examine, interview, and test, and then
Okay.
we'll close out. I don't want to leave that as, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah,
You want me to do it?
yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So when your assessor gets there, there's 3 different testing techniques. You have examine, interview, and test. So depends on how they choose to do their assessment. If they examine like I said, these are the things that they will, these are the things they will look for. Some might just look for your SSP, which is written right here. This is all just very wordy, so you would have to um, read through it. So some people actually have a policy for each one of these. So instead of a system security plan, they have an individual policy. And they might just have a system security plan that kind of like reaches back to the policy and says, refer back to the system and information integrity policy. I've actually never seen that before, but I think that's what basically this is saying. They might just have procedures addressing flaw remediation. This is what I was talking about with regards to your development teams. If they already have a process for addressing flaw remediation, there's no reason to rewrite something. I would inside my system security plan, because this is in every assessment I've been in, this is their the system security plan is their guide. It's literally the main document that they always want to go off of. So what I would do is I would highlight that document. I would say, you know, read through our blah, blah, blah flaw remediation guide. I'd refer to it. Some people address it in their configuration management plan. I've actually seen that before, where that's how they address their patch management, since it does have to do with changes and blah, 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 blah. So it might be referred to our change management plan for our flaw remediation. So basically, these are the things they're going to look at. They're going to physically say, give me a copy of these things. And that's it. They're going to say, let us read it. I've actually seen it where they ask for these things ahead of time to give them a chance to read it before they even get to your site. So it's like you can't convince them of anything. You can't walk them through it. It's like they're just going to read it without any context. So you got to make sure that context is there. Interview, this is what we were talking about, where they're going to go around to your you don't get to choose the people. They're going to go around to people in your area. If they do ask for specific people, like specific roles, they're just going to say, who are the system and network admins? We're going to say these are, and they're going to say, okay, I want to talk to him, and him. They might want to talk to an HR person. They might want to talk to specific people in other roles, and ask them questions about certain parts or processes of the CMMC, or of this specific control. But in reality, what they're going to do is they're going to have a whole bunch of questions. They're not going to every control come for one question. They're going to have a whole slew of questions ready and interview this person one time. So it's not so disruptive. And there should be a whole schedule so that you can prepare your system or network admin for time away from their desk. Usually how I've seen it. Depends on
I've
who
seen
you
them go
hire.
in. So anytime I've seen them just go into an area and just pick someone, everyone scatters. Because I'm so serious. You have to be like, hey, Jim, you need to be at your desk at 3:00 because, right? So that's, I think, why it's important to know the roles, to your point. But if they're trying to do something random, you got to tell certain people you got to stay. You got to volunteer them to sit down because they scatter like the lights turned on, they're out of there. So
yeah, I've been in both situations. I really think it depends on maybe who you work for.
True. Oh yeah.
And where you sit in that role.
Yeah. True. Very true.
I don't know that I've ever been in a place where I could just run away.
I've seen it. We've had to track
so
people
funny.
down. But again, it's the role. To your point, it's the role. If it's random interviews just to check something, who your FSO is, or well, that's a different role. But
yeah.
Okay,
and then for tests, this is when they're going to physically do something. This one is a little tougher. I don't know if that's a real word, but this one they might just shoulder surf and see maybe the system admin, like what's their process for identifying, reporting, and correcting a system flaw. So they might say, show me what you do. let me see how you do these things. Or let's follow the steps in whatever this process here that you mentioned. I want to see it in action to see if it's a real thing or not. So that's basically what test is, something physical. So okay, this discussion here, this is basically breaking down the actual control. It's explaining to you why this control is so important. It's explaining the purpose of this control. And this is my favorite part because I have been not often, but I have been to places where people don't meet this control, but they have something sometimes better, and they'll say, well, we don't meet this control. And I'll say, no, but you have something tremendously, maybe not in this particular control, right? But I'll say what you have in place is so much better. And they're like, but that doesn't matter. I'm still not compliant. And I'm like, but you could still say that you have a mitigation in place, a compensating control in place, and you'll be fine. So it's understanding what this control is trying to do, and how are you doing that? And then what I love in this document is it does actually give a pretty decent example, and I do believe that the example is kind of easy to understand. And I like how it kind of gives you the letters, and so you can understand where the answers to each of the assessment procedures kind of broke it down. I still call it assessment procedures because I'm still RMF'd, but you know what I mean. Or CCIs, whatever you want to call them today. But yeah, so that's why I really like this, this document, the assessment guide.
Yeah.
But it does that through every single control family, every single control. And it just breaks it down like that for all of them. So it is a lot. But now you see why it says it's 110 controls. So this is one of those 110. This is the control here. This one. But it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inside of it. 6 little baby controls, and assessment objectives is what they call it. It's got 6 assessment objectives inside of it.
Yep.
So
welcome to the world. Yeah. And that's what makes it challenging. I remember when we initially went to RMF, the CCIs took us, we were totally thrown off. Are you kidding me? This isn't just one, this is like 20.
It was 1,400 and something for the,
It was, and now we of course have a down pat because we have standards and templates, but initially, just knocked us off our high horse, right? It was a lot. But this is good. Like I said it before and I'll say it again, I really feel like really understanding this and knowing that it's nuanced, right? It's nuanced, but it's doable if you just think through it and like look at what you have. You brought that up so many times. Look at what you have, and go from there. Don't just count yourself out, because some things can be better. And it's all about, when I was on mute, I said selling, right? Selling your solution and how it meets the requirements is a huge part of it. And you do that by knowing that process inside and out and how it correlates. So that's a good one. You may have it. So I think that this, at least starting out, really looking at the scope and detail, what documentation helps with your scope, looking at now the assessment document, really like, okay, what does that look like now when we go into the control families? Well, a step back, you broke down the control families, right? What all these control families need. And now looking at some of the harder control families to see how it's broken down and what a control looks like. A single control can probably take you, depending on the complexity, it might take you a week or 2 weeks to go through and build the documentation if you don't have it. Find the documentation, source the right people, interview the right people to make sure it's all in place. It's not like in an hour, I'm going to figure this out and be done with this whole thing in like a couple days. No. Some documents, some SSPs, some assessments take weeks, months, right? I know for some of our systems, even though it's RMF, we had a 120-day runway, 120 days, actually before that, right? 160, because you have to start early enough so that you can get it
Uh,
submitted depending on
yeah.
your authorization cycle, but that's a whole other thing. But it's so important to really know this is not a quick process, and be
Right.
okay with that, right? It's just not. So I appreciate this a lot. And I don't know, let me just see really quickly. We had a couple of, we had a thank you for the great presentation. Richie said that to us. So thank you, Yvonne.
That's cool how
Um,
you put him up there.
I learned that last time I saw it. I'm like, oh, you can put comments up. And we got a hey, y'all, from Cassandra. So this is early on. She said hey to us. So I appreciate that. I know we kind of went over a little bit, but I really didn't want to leave us at a cliffhanger in the middle of just looking at that first control to just see what it encompasses to go through one control, just
Yeah.
one out of 110 for level. Yeah, 110 for level 2.
Level 2.
So same thing for level, 1, but it's just 15 of those, which is a little
Yep.
bit lighter, but still challenging.
Yes.
So I appreciate this. We may look at another part to this if it's helpful. If it is, leave a comment. I know Richie said thank you for the presentation, but I think the goal is not to have a podcast style for this. It's really to say, hey, this is a resource you can go through your LinkedIn Live and click on it and get some information, or
Yeah.
streamed it to a couple of different platforms this time. I did it on Facebook and I did it on YouTube just to test it out. But that's the goal, right? Is to have
Okay.
something actionable that you can go and watch, listen to on your way. And if, Yvonne is willing, we can go through a little bit deeper and kind
I'm
of
happy
dig
to
into,
help.
yeah. But let me know after this is all done. Just comment below and let me know if this was helpful, and if you want to see a little bit more. Maybe it could be a different series, maybe not live, but thinking about how to curate just a helpful resource. I know everyone talks about CMMC, but people have different styles, different ways to present, different ways to just work through it. And so this is just another resource. And just to recap, I am gonna, or Yvonne, I don't have all the links, but all the links to
Yeah.
the sources we talked about, we're gonna pop up under the event on LinkedIn. So if you're on YouTube or Facebook and you did tune in, thank you. But all the resources are gonna be on LinkedIn because that's the primary platform for these LinkedIn Lives. So again, thank you so much, Yvonne, for the great information. I appreciate it. If no one does, I do. And I'm sure people are going to go back through and reference this because it's a good source and a good kickstart for somebody to actually work through this process. That is, we made it very clear it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's doable.
It is
So
doable.
that's
You
the
guys
goal.
got this.
Yeah, you got this. You got it. So hopefully, again, this was helpful and supportive. And enjoy your Friday. I'm gonna go ahead to family night. I'm a little late for it, so hopefully I don't get bashed too hard for it. But I'm heading home
Oh,
for family night to hang out with the girls and my husband. So thank you
okay.
so much.
You're very welcome.
All right, bye guys. Have a great
Bye.
Friday.